Tennessee is 4-0, ranked top 5 in the country. Bye week coming up this week. So, first third of the season, who's been Tennessee's MVP on offense and on defense? That and so much more. It's your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome into it. This is Locked On Vols, and I am your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols a part of your morning routine, your first listen, your first watch, each and every single day. Couldn't do it without you guys, you everydayers. Do need to make some t-shirts about that. If I had some merch, maybe that's something I can look into. I really do appreciate you guys, and appreciate FanDuel Sportsbook for being a part of the show. You can place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's over at FanDuel.com. Go check it out to get started today. Got a lot of things to get into. First, Josh Ward for Ward Wednesday is going to come up in segment 2. Going to answer more mailbag questions in segment 3. But with the first third of the season over with so far, we're going to discuss here briefly here in a short little segment who the MVPs are of the team so far for the University of Tennessee. And for me, it's pretty simple, at least on the offensive end. Number one on offense, your MVP is 100% Dylan Sampson. Dylan Sampson, who is second in the SEC in rushing after playing only 11 of the possible 16 quarters so far this season. Dylan Sampson that leads the SEC in rushing touchdowns. Dylan Sampson that leads the SEC in scoring. Dylan Sampson, who is number 3 in all-purpose yards in the SEC. He's been really good. 449 rushing yards so far this season on 69 attempts. He's averaging 6.5 yards a carry. He has 10 touchdowns. He's averaging 112 yards on the game, and boy, he earned all 92 yards that he got on the ground against Oklahoma. That defense for Oklahoma and the Sooners, I think, is pretty stout, pretty salty, and it certainly showed and certainly, portrayed that in the first quarter of the other night. And I thought Josh Heupel's ability to stay with the run. Don't panic, continue to go back. It paid off in more ways than one because it allowed you to change your game plan in the second half along with your defense. And, of course, we've talked about that ad nauseum. But Dylan Sampson, I think, is just having a phenomenal year so far. Clearly, he's kind of the complete package, in my opinion. He's got the speed. He's got the vision. He's got the patience. He's got the toughness. He's got the leadership. He's going to be a guy. He's the guy that reminds me of a former number 6 that played here at Tennessee, and that's Alvin Kamara. And I understand, that's a pretty lofty expectation, but man, or that comparison. But he kind of does it a little bit of it all, right? And his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and pass protect. I know that one of those strip sacks, he should have helped out with that on Saturday night, but I think Dylan Sampson clearly is the offensive MVP. Why not Nico? Nico's been fine. Nico's not been disappointing whatsoever, but in these football games, a couple of blowouts, Nico, they haven't had to rely on Nico to win them a football game just yet so far in the season. You're only 4 games in. Nico's numbers are fine. He's been as advertised. But so far, I just think the easy answer here is Dylan Sampson for sure. So that's my offensive MVP. If you have somebody different, please let me know. And then defensively, I think it's pretty easy as well. Maybe everybody was thinking it'd be James Pierce at this time. Maybe everybody's thinking that it's Jermod McCoy, I think he's, Tennessee's best corner by a country mile. I think he's Tennessee's best transfer portal addition. He's been really good. But right now, I'm going to go with an edge defender, but not the one that we all thought it would be, coming into this year. It's going to be Joshua Josephs. Joshua Josephs is having a fine season. He's got 9 total tackles in 4 games, okay? Josephs has 2.5 TFLs. He has 2 forced fumbles. He has 2 fumble recoveries. Of course, all that came in the game against Oklahoma at critical points and times for sure. Joshua Josephs has played a ton of football. He's been on the field a lot. Not as much as James Pierce, but he's been on the field a ton. He's made, the official stats here have him listed for 2.5 TFLs. I can promise you he's got more than that. For sure. But it's just his presence, right? I mean, when everybody's focusing on James Pierce, he's benefiting. When everybody's focusing on James Pierce in turn, it's opening things up for Dominic Bailey and Tyree West on the other side. It's still benefiting Joshua Josephs. He's playing with confidence, and he's been a relentless pass rusher. He's been good against the run as well. Been really good against the run. I could have went Arian Carter here. I could have went Keenan Peely. I could have went Jermod McCoy. But I want to give some roses to Joshua Josephs here because everybody's talking about James Pierce, and James Pierce leads the team with 10 quarterback hurries. He's missed a couple would-be sacks. I don't think he's been bad, but the numbers haven't been there. Joshua Josephs has been nothing but really, really solid and good so far this season. So let me know where you would go for defensive MVP right now. I understand there's a couple of different ways we could have went here. I went Joshua Josephs. Let me know what you have to say at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. Just so you know, Dylan Sampson has the third highest Pro Football Focus grade for Tennessee. And technically, I should throw Gaston Moore out of here. Gaston Moore's got the second highest, but he's only played in 41 snaps. Dante Thornton in 87 snaps has a 90.1 Pro Football Focus grade. Dylan Sampson in 153 snaps has a grade of 88.1 according to Pro Football Focus, which the 90.1 is considered elite for Dante Thornton. The 88.1 is considered above average, or considered very good on that grading scale. You look at defensive Pro Football Focus grade for the season, and it's another elite grade right here. Joshua Josephs, again, leads the way. On 78 defensive snaps this season, he has a Pro Football Focus grade of 92.5. 92.5. According to Pro Football Focus, he's got 4 pressures, 4 hurries, 6 tackles, 7 tackles overall. He has 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 3 quarterback hurries, or 4 quarterback hurries. So all that and more for Joshua Josephs, who has a 92.5, an elite grade according to Pro Football Focus. Let me know. Do you guys agree with me? Tell me who your early season Tennessee football MVPs are, offensively and defensively, through the first 4 games of the season. Would love to hear from you at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. When we come back, Josh Ward, a little Ward Wednesday, when we return here on Locked On Vols. Hey, Locked On Vols fans, Roy is a new platform that lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. Download Roy on iOS or Android and enter the referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. This week, we've selected Jason Jenkins because he played 7 snaps. He had a sack and a tackle and a half for loss. He had a Tennessee safety, and he's making the most of his opportunities, and he certainly did that against Oklahoma. Could have went a number of different ways there, but we're going Jason Jenkins this week. I'm giving Jason Jenkins $100 on Roy this week for his play over on in Oklahoma against the Sooners. If you were impressed as we were with his performance on Saturday, you can show him some love too. Just hop on Roy and throw in a few bucks. If everyone pitches in just $10, it adds up fast for Jason Jenkins this week. So now you have the chance to show your appreciations to Jason Jenkins about his standout performance this week, as well as what he'll continue to bring to the program. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. Support the players. Change the game with Roy. And I do want to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just like any other job board. It helps you find professionals that you can't find anywhere else, those who aren't actually searching for a new job but might be open for the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're truly looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. You can hire a professional like a professional over at LinkedIn.com. 2.5 million small businesses are currently using LinkedIn, so you need to as well. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. That is LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Josh, so far, so good for Tennessee football. Number 5 in the country, according to the AP. I think if the college football playoff rankings were out right now, Tennessee would be even higher than that. Tennessee's 4-0 and ahead of the first bye week. So far, so good through the first third of the season. Good morning.
Yeah, Tennessee is in the position I think every Tennessee fan hoped to be in. The coaches, the players planned on being in this position at 4-0. But in maybe a better position than a lot of people expected, because the confidence level that Tennessee will be a playoff team is probably higher than it was in July and August when we talked about the possibility of the Vols being 4-0. Part of that is because I think of looking at the schedule moving forward. Another part is the defense, which came in with all kinds of hype with how well they could play up front has probably exceeded expectations somehow. And I think Tennessee's in a great position. The offense will continue to improve. There are questions. Tennessee is not a perfect team. Tennessee's not the favorite to win the SEC title or the national title. But Tennessee right now looks more likely than not to make the college football playoff. And with the ability to still improve, could accomplish a lot this season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly not a finished product. There are places where Tennessee can improve, but I mean, from the grand scheme of things, and you can only play what's on the schedule, and even on that schedule, we'll see how good Oklahoma ends up being. I think that's a pretty good defense, but Tennessee has 4 wins, 2 wins over ranked opponents at the time, 2 wins away from Neyland Stadium. Again, you just continue to check things off the list there for the Volunteers.
Yeah, and going to Norman, Oklahoma to play a game early in the season is valuable. That's something that the players experienced that will help going on the road later in the season. When Tennessee goes to Athens, Georgia, the Vols will play a much better team than they played this past weekend. But having traveled, heck, it should help in getting ready to go to Fayetteville. So I'm looking way ahead to Georgia. This Arkansas game cannot just be checked off as an automatic win. Tennessee should win the game and will be favored to win the game going in, but they have to show up and win the game. And Arkansas will prepare all those things. But Tennessee they have so many guys up front that have either developed or come in as transfers to help right away. And what Tennessee has put together on defense has paid off. Josh Heupel's plan, I thought, on Saturday was terrific, either going into the game or if we're talking about how it played out over 4 quarters. The Vols are just one of the best teams in the country, and I don't know how you can argue otherwise. Tennessee got some breaks on the schedule. I thought that was the case before the season. I picked Tennessee to go 10-2, partly because I thought the schedule was favorable. I think it's turning out to be more favorable than I thought going in. But, NC State's worse than I expected. Oklahoma offensively is probably worse than I expected. I thought they'd have concerns. They have major concerns so far.
Yeah.
But Tennessee also dominated and took advantage of those concerns in such an obvious way. Tennessee did what it was supposed to, and then some, and that's why they get so much credit for it.
Let's go back to that game on Saturday night. You mentioned Tennessee dominated, and I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Tennessee was leading 19-3 going into the halftime break, leading 22-3 heading into the fourth quarter. Very much, despite what Oklahoma social media wants to tell you, Tennessee offensively very much took the foot off the gas. Very conservative. What did you think about Josh Heupel doing that, leaning on the defense, leaning on that run game that finally got going to protect his quarterback and the lead? It reminded me of those maxims that Tennessee is supposed to play off, right? Protect your lead, protect your quarterback, protect the football. That's what Tennessee did, and in doing so, you won a game on the road against a top 15 team, and you covered as well.
Yeah, I know there's the conversation of, Tennessee could have done this. Tennessee could have scored this many points. Maybe they could have, maybe they couldn't. I don't know. I know they didn't need to. And Josh Heupel knew that they didn't need to. What he needed to do was win the game, protect his quarterback, get back to Knoxville 4-0 in the best position possible to win the next game and compete for all those goals, those championships that we've talked about Tennessee aiming for. And the best way to do that was run the football, take care of the ball, take care of the quarterback, and allow the defense to go out and play as well as it was. Tennessee's defense put the Vols in that kind of position. Tennessee's offense gave the ball up a couple of times to make life more difficult for Tennessee's defense. And the defense said, no problem, we got you. And they got the ball right back for Tennessee. But Josh Heupel knew, hey, we could give the ball up again. If we keep dropping Nico back, he could get hit again. And what if the ball gets scooped and run back this time? Or what if they don't give it back to us again? So there was no need to play that what-if game. Josh Heupel knew that if they ran the football and they kept going at Oklahoma, and if they had to punt it back, so be it, because Jackson Ross was kicking the ball really well, and Tennessee's defense was going to make it so difficult for this freshman quarterback who's now trying to lead this charge for OU. It was too much to ask for Hawkins. Heupel knew it, and he coached and called the game appropriately. I thought he did exactly what he should have.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm sitting there in real time. I'm sitting in that studio or the press box, and I'm like, it's clear as day what they're doing right here. It's like, from a fan's perspective or from somebody covering the game, it's like, 3rd and 7. Let's put the ball in the air here. Let's try to be aggressive. So, I didn't like that at the time, but totally understood it because of the way, you already got away with those 2 quarterback strip sacks and Nico getting drilled. And, with a 19-3, 22-3 lead. I mean, yeah, the way your defense is playing, what's the point? You look at what Tennessee did defensively, and Joshua Joseph's 2 forced fumbles. Jacoby Thomas continued to flash. I thought Jackson Moy, Jason Jenkins played well. I mean, this Tennessee defense just continues to do what this Tennessee defense continues to look like one of the best units in all of America. That's probably the biggest surprise for me a third of the way through the season. Not that they're good, just that they've been a much, much, much better than I thought they'd be.
Yeah, they've, again, taken advantage of some weaknesses from their opponents. They just made life impossible, really, for Oklahoma's offense. It was impossible for Oklahoma to do everything it needed to, moving the ball down the field. Even when Tennessee's backs were against the wall at the goal line, and Oklahoma had a chance to score. Well, early in the game, when they get the ball inside the 10, they cough it up. Late in the game, when they are able to score, look how difficult it still was for Oklahoma to get the ball in the end zone. Eric, when guys come in to replace starters on the defensive line, and then another rotation of players come in, nothing changes about the expectation. Nothing changes about how difficult it is for the opposing offense. Some of those names you mentioned, if you go back to the 22 class that Tennessee signed, James Pierce Jr. is the most accomplished of that class, but he's not the guy we're talking about the most this season. We're talking about Joshua Josephs, who was honored by the SEC and was helping knock that ball out on Saturday to give the ball back to the offense. You mentioned Jason Jenkins. He's a guy that you scroll down to see in the rankings, but he's a guy that he could have left in the transfer portal for a day. We thought that he might. He decided to stay. He adds another big-time talent to come in for a few snaps and help the defensive line. And then Tyree West is one of the most impressive developmental stories, I think, over the last couple seasons. Highly touted when he came in, but he has turned into maybe the next monster up front for Tennessee's defense. And all of that adds up to life being hell for opposing offenses. So we'll get a better idea against Alabama and against Georgia of how well this defense can play against the best. But that's now the conversation, how Tennessee's defense can do against the best teams that we all expect to compete for titles.
A football junkie like myself, a football nerd, like I love when things pay off. And I said this going into the game. I was like, some things are not going to work. I mean, does Josh Heupel have the maturity? Does Josh Heupel have the patience to stay with whatever is in his game plan and see if it eventually comes around? The run game was stuffed in the first quarter, man. And I saw you share a clip from Cole Kubelik from his podcast, and I couldn't agree more with what he said. In the first quarter, Tennessee ran 7 times for 7 yards. The second quarter, Tennessee finally got going. It was DeSean Bishop that sparked it. Dylan Sampson finally came in there and had that touchdown drive there towards the end where they just gave it to him every single play. How rewarding was it that Tennessee stuck with the run, ended up having 151 rushing yards, which is a good day, not a great day, but not a bad day either. But from the looks of things in the first quarter to where the game ended, man, that Tennessee run game was rewarded. The offensive line didn't have its best day, especially pulling, and of course we know protecting, but they were good enough, and those backs were good enough, and Tennessee was able to ice that game away with that defense because the run game finally came around.
Yeah, it was a good day overall considering it was Oklahoma's defense. We can't compare the running game for Tennessee against Kent State or Chattanooga, which is like running against air or running against the dummies out there, versus big-time players that Oklahoma has recruited. Preseason All-Americans are on Oklahoma's defense. And when we talk about being conservative on offense, that's obviously referring to play calling, and are you putting the ball in the air? Are you trying to move the ball down the field?
Yeah, when the ball's snapped, you're going 100 miles an hour trying to score.
Right. But I'll bet to Javonte Spraggins and Cooper Mays, it didn't feel like a conservative approach because they are having to go hit play after play against big-time defensive guys up front for Oklahoma. And the clip you mentioned from Cole, just grinding it out. And that was a hard-fought effort from Tennessee up front. And again, just smart, because if they're having protection issues for Nico, they're better off protecting the football by running it. I think DeSean Bishop is another guy that we should talk about more in terms of what he's added. He was just above, I think, 4 yards a carry. In that kind of game, you don't ask for anything more from DeSean Bishop. And for him to get that amount of carries, a year ago we weren't talking about him being that guy this year for Tennessee. He is right now, and he's earned that spot. But again, Tennessee's defense put Tennessee's offense in a position where that's all it needed to do. There will be a time later in the season where Tennessee's offense will have to be more aggressive through the air and in the run game and what they're trying to do. Saturday wasn't that day. Josh Heupel knew it, and he called a game appropriately. The best teams, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan last season, they're in those kinds of games where the head coach knows we don't need 40, we don't need 50, and we don't need to risk anything trying to get that number just to make people happy. Tennessee covered, by the way, so that's no concern. And they did more than enough to get a road win. That's all Josh Heupel needed, and that's exactly what he got.
And if you were listening and watching the Locked On Vols last week, I told you take the under. I'm not an under guy, but I just felt like that was going to be an under type of game, and boy, did it hit by a country mile, that under. Josh, out the door, man.
I had 31-20 as a final, and they didn't quite get there, but I had the same thought. Like, Oklahoma's offense is probably not going to have a great day, and Tennessee won't need to do as much. So, again, I thought there would be a little bit more scoring, but not much. I wasn't surprised at all that it was a lower scoring game. Tennessee's not putting up 50 a game. They will against UTEP probably later in the season. No. They'll do it again, but they're not doing that every week, and they won't need to because of how great this defense is. It's a different conversation than we've had the last 3 years.
Out the door, tell us one thing Tennessee needs to work on and accomplish over the bye week, and tell us where we can check out the Josh and Swain newsletter every Friday morning.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest question coming out will be the tackle position health. I don't know how much they can get done in terms of health. Like John Campbell Jr. is probably just a conversation we're going to have over the season because we had it at the end of last year and during camp when he was being held back a lot. And then Lance Hurd needs to be ready to go. And he wasn't this past weekend for whatever reason was decided on. He needs to be ready to go as best he can the rest of the way so that Tennessee's at full strength at tackle. But that's a conversation I'm sure they're having along with healing up and planning for Arkansas, which will be ready when the Vols arrive. Josh and Swain newsletter, appreciate you mentioning that. It's once a week. It's free. We talk about cover the biggest topics that we've discussed during the week. It goes out every Friday morning, joshandswain.com to subscribe again for free or use that link that Eric provides you.
And, of course, listen to Josh Ward with VFL Jason Swain, 99.1 The Sports Animal, noon to 3 on weekdays. Josh, as always, man, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return over on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view the play-by-play live, and so much more on the same page where you make your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Again, that is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All that and more is over at FanDuel.com. Plus, the safe, secure, easy-to-use app. I use it every single day when I'm looking at Tennessee's upcoming game and all that. Of course, Tennessee's off this weekend. Next weekend on the road at Arkansas. I'm intrigued to see what that will kind of look like as we get closer and closer to kickoff, what Arkansas looks like this past weekend. But we know that Tennessee's defense has been lights out so far this season, and defense travels, so maybe the under will be in play. But we can check all that out when it's released over at FanDuel Sportsbook. You can bet on NFL Sunday all season long over at FanDuel.com. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, it's where you can make every moment more. All right, welcome back into your Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. We just talked with Josh Ward. Typically, we have that in segment number 3, but I did want to get into some more of your mailbag questions because you guys just continue to send them in, and I thank you. And there's some duplicates in here, and I won't spend time on some of those duplicates, but I did want to kind of answer some more and try to get those in here. So. All right, let's go to Aaron. Aaron says, hey, Eric, just wondering on what your thoughts are on the limited passing plays against OU. I understand the concept of running off the clock when we have the lead, but it seemed like we ran 90% of the game. This kind of goes into I actually didn't hit this on yesterday's show, and I completely forgot. Let's see here. This actually goes into what Trevor was saying. Trevor also wrote here, I didn't grow up playing football, so I'm pretty ignorant about a lot of football things. With that being said, I got nervous at the change in the play calling towards the end of the first half. Maybe it's Battervall syndrome, but I was feeling flashbacks to last season's Alabama game. To me, it felt similar, but can you explain to a non-football playing fan how the situation from Oklahoma game might be different from the Alabama game? Also, obviously, I'm very happy we won the game. I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to understand football better. Trevor brings up some good points because if you remember Tennessee on the road at Alabama last year, I think Tennessee was leading, 21-7 at the half or something like that. and Tennessee ended up blowing that lead and blowing the football game. The difference in Tennessee at halftime in this football game compared to the Alabama football game is, number one, your defense is playing absolute lights out. Your defense obviously was playing well in that Alabama game at the time, but your defense was clearly being dominant at this point in time in the football game. Number two, you had Jalen Milroe. You had a really good offensive line. You had weapons at wide receiver. There were a lot of good things going on out for Alabama offensively in that football game to where you knew they could come back and win that football game, and they did. You look over at the other sideline, you just benched Jackson Arnold. You have a makeshift offensive line. You can't run the football, and you have no weapons. So the offense and the personnel was very much different. Number three, Tennessee wasn't running the football well in that game at the halftime break. Tennessee had just gotten the ball rolling offensively in this football game against Oklahoma. Number four, Nico got drilled, and they got away with 2 strip sacks in that first half with backup tackles. That was not the case against Alabama. So there were so many different things that were contributing to the fact that, hey, Tennessee should, or at least Josh Heupel is like, hey, let me be conservative here. Let me pull back a little bit, okay? And let's lean on this defense and lean on this run. Those are kind of the differences in why he did it in this game and that you didn't do it against Jalen Milroe in Alabama. I think the biggest thing overall is the way the defense is playing, but also against Alabama, you had really, really good players offensively that you knew they could come back. Oklahoma just didn't offensively. Defensively they did, but offensively just didn't. So that's kind of how I would explain that, Trevor. But overall, in terms of, going back to what Aaron says, more passing plays, more running plays than passing plays. Seems like we ran 90% of the game. It wasn't that much, but certainly, Tennessee ran the football. Let's see here. I got it right here. Tennessee threw it 21 times, and Tennessee ran the football 52 times. Clearly, Tennessee still took some shots in this third quarter, one to brew down the sideline, but the game plan was to run the football, and I think it just all kind of contributes to the way that Tennessee was trying to win that football game and the way that Tennessee was not protecting its quarterback. So, again, we talked a little bit about this on Tuesday's show, but I wanted to reiterate that here with some of these questions. Breyer says, I asked the question last season asking about the lackluster production of Dante Thornton. This season, he has been our most consistent threat, leading the team in yards and touchdowns. Was it a personnel issue because Keaton, or just a bad year for him? Number one, I think it's both. Number one, it was a bad year for him. Number two, he was playing out of position. Dante Thornton is an outside receiver, and Tennessee tried to play him in the slot last year in the early going. Finally, before Brew McCoy's injury, and you had to shuffle the deck a little bit, and they finally put Dante Thornton on the outside, and he came through. He played really well against Kentucky. He played really well against UConn. Caught the first touchdown on a great adjustment against Missouri at Missouri. That was the only touchdown of the game for Tennessee. And then, of course, that was the play where he got injured, went out, and he missed the rest of the season in the bowl game. So, number one, he was dealing with some injuries. Number two, he was playing out of position. But I think more than anything now, he's just confident, and he knows the offense, and he's confident in himself. He is a big play guy. He was a big play at Oregon, and so far he's been a big play here. I think he has 7 receptions, 3 touchdowns, over 200 yards receiving. Clearly, he's that big play guy, averaging 36 yards per reception. But he's been good, man. He reminds me of Javonte Payton so far, and I hope they continue to give him the football. Orange Kool-Aid wants to know, is the current offensive line depth a potential problem that could hold this Tennessee team back from beating elite teams? Well, clearly you had your backup tackles in the football game on Saturday, and it didn't go very well at times. Dane Davis had a rough day, man. But Dane Davis has played a lot of football games. He's played against Alabama. He's played against Georgia, so on and so forth. I've said that consistently because everybody just hates on guys that were former walk-ons or hates on backups. And I mean, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. He had a horrible day. He was really bad on Saturday. But I've seen Dane play much, much, much more for Tennessee, and he's been better. So I still feel good about him as that backup option and that insurance policy for John Campbell, who, until he makes it through a football game, I don't believe he can make it through a football game. You know what I'm saying? But Tennessee's depth at tackle, I think, is an issue. Jesse Perry, I think, is going to be a good one, but he's not ready yet. You like Tennessee's depth in the interior because you have Jackson Lampley that, can play some football. And, of course, William Satterwhite is coming along at the center position. And Andre Keurek's been playing really, really well. Of course, he's starting. But you hope you're not in position to have to rely on so much the depth at tackle. But right now, you are having to rely on that depth. You just can't afford to have 2 starters out, especially at tackle at a time. That's the biggest thing. Tennessee needs to get its tackles on the field, and they need to stay. Let's go to RJ. Hey, Vols. Hey, Kane. RJ from Ohio. Is this 12-team playoff? Is it going to be like the Selection Sunday for hoops, or do you have to just be in the top 12? Excuse me. Yeah, just because you're ranked currently in the top 12 by the College Football Playoff or the Associated Press or whatever, remember, that's not a slam dunk that you're in, okay? They have to make room for automatic bids. They have to make room for a group of 5 team to get in there. So, yeah, you need to be watching it, for sure. Say you don't win the SEC, but you have 2 losses and you come from the SEC, I mean, you're going to get in. You don't have to sweat it. But, say you're one of those teams that's kind of on the borderline because of your strength of schedule, because of the way you lost some of those games. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a big time show that you're going to have to watch, you're going to have to react, you're going to have to be paying attention to. But you do have to, the Power 4 automatic qualifiers. You have the Group of 5 qualifier in there. Where's Notre Dame in this conversation? They're probably out of the College Football Playoff because of that horrible loss a couple of weeks ago. I think it's going to be really, really good TV for sure. It's not going to be exactly like the Selection Sunday show, but it's going to be pretty good. On both sides of the ball, what do you think they need to improve on these next 2 weeks? Pass blocking, and Tennessee started to miss some tackles defensively. So work on tackling. Jonathan Wade on the Rocky Top Rewind Sunday night said focus on turnovers. So to me, that just screams circuits. They start the defensive practice every single time doing tackling and takeaway circuits. Hone in on that. Offensively, pass protection for sure, and then you got to finish scoring in the red zone, man. Tennessee's reverting back to bad ways from 2023. Eric, give us an inside look at what the following the recruiting trail looks like. Media always have the idea of where guys are going. Where is that intel coming from? The recruits themselves or the staff? Yeah, I used to cover recruiting much more than what I am now, but I'm obviously still around it and help out a little bit. Sometimes it's the player that will tell you. A lot of times, we have something recorded with the player ahead of this announcement. A lot of times it is the staff that will let us know. A lot of times it's people at the school. I mean, you just kind of have to work it, right? You got to find your angle. Who is your connection? Who is your source? Sometimes it's the kid. Sometimes it's a coach. Sometimes it's Tennessee. Just kind of work your sources and figure it out. But the majority of the time, if you're good at your job, you've got a story or a video banked with the kid ready to roll when he commits. And most prospects are willing to do that. Some aren't, and that's okay because they don't want anybody to ruin their moment, even though everybody already knows what's going to happen. But it's all about relationships. A couple more here. I know we're running. Actually, I'm just gonna. Nope. I need to go ahead and hit this here. Let's see here. Looking at the Georgia-Alabama game, would Tennessee benefit more from a Georgia win or an Alabama win? Obviously, it doesn't matter if Tennessee wins out, but we have Bama at home and Georgia on the road. So a Tennessee win over Alabama seems more likely than a win in Athens. Also, long-term, if Bama... I didn't bookmark the other one. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I'm just going to be sitting there watching from afar. Tennessee's got to play both these teams. I would say if Georgia beats Alabama, puts one loss up there, and then Alabama's got to come to Neyland in a couple of weeks, that might be more beneficial for Tennessee. Let's see here. Riley wants to know any truth to the rumors on Hurd backing out last second of the OU game because of NIL money. That is not the case. There's nothing wrong with his name, image, and likeness deal. I can tell you that. Why didn't Hurd travel with the team? I don't know. I don't know that. Sometimes injured players don't travel with the team. Can Nico do anything to not fumble the football? We'll see, man. It's kind of hard when you're getting hit from their blind side. But also Nico's got to have that clock, and he's got to know kind of where it's at, or step up, or go ahead and go down and protect the football. I'm not gonna ridicule a guy from getting blindsided and fumbling a football, but your internal clock needs to let you know that you don't have all day, and you need to kind of have awareness of that to protect the football more than anything. All right, that is going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Thanks so much for sending in those questions. We had overtime for the mailbag edition of the show. Usually we do it every Tuesday, but as long as you guys want to ask questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I can't thank you enough. Appreciate Josh Ward for stopping by the show. Enjoyed our conversation on early season MVPs. All that and more happens right here on Locked On Vols every single day. We'll be back on Thursday, continue this bye week, and then get you set for Tennessee and Arkansas next weekend. All that and more on a Locked On Vols Thursday edition that's coming up tomorrow.